Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs and another edition of Bicycle Legs Discovers Rush. And today I have a very special guest, Mr. Ryan Murphy from the legendary internet fan group RushFans. Ryan, wonderful to have you on the channel. Thank you so much for doing this for me.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
And just before we get into it, I have to tell all my viewers a little story that I just shared with Ryan off camera beforehand, that Ryan's actually indirectly responsible for this series even existing, because I was, as I told in my first episode when I did this series, I was originally introduced to Rush via their debut album. I had an old friend that I used to work with, and we used to swap CDs with each other. And he gave me the Rush debut album, and I went and I listened to it, and I thought, it's all right. I didn't think that much of it, and I didn't go and explore the band any further. Go into, I think you said it was December of 2021,
Correct.
and there was Ryan did an episode of the Contrarians where they did a worst albums episode, and the album featured was Rush's debut album. And when I watched that episode, I thought to myself, oh man, I need to give this band another try. And that's how this series came to be. So Ryan, thank you so much for doing that episode, because it got me into listening to this band.
Listen, I told you this off camera too. If I could redo that whole episode, I would provide probably 10 different points. But yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad you're discovering Rush. It's always good to bring new fans on board and
Yeah.
have new folks discover the band. So this should be fun.
Yeah. So if Ryan, you could tell me a little bit about the album that you've given me as my album assignment, a little background behind the album, and particularly why you picked this album for me.
Yeah, for sure. So Test for Echo is the 16th studio album by Rush, released September 10th, 1996. It was Anthem Records. This was the final record co-produced with Peter Collins. The band supported this album in 96 and 97 on their world tour, after which went on a 4-year hiatus following the deaths of Neil Peart's wife and daughter. Very tragic death of both of them, mainly the daughter, but the wife then after. They would not record again until Vapor Trails 2002, so 6-year hiatus between records. Regarding the cover artwork, I wanted to briefly mention this in case you are unaware. I mean, it's in Hugh Syme's book, who does all the Rush cover artwork. This rock formation, this is in the shape of a man. It's called an Inukshuk. So Neil traveled to Canada's Northwest Territories, to the town of Yellowknife, 250 miles south of the Arctic Circle. And overlooking this town was this massive rock formation that he just kind of became enamored with. Sent Hugh Syme a postcard, and then Hugh Syme built it, and he still has it to this day on his desk. Built this, and that's what this is. But it's of course made to resemble that Inukshuk that Neil became enamored with. In terms of where the band was at this time, there was 3 years between Counterparts in 93 and 96 for Test for Echo. And on the back, you'll see satellite dishes. So what does that mean? Well, fans will say that this album didn't have any kind of theme running through it, whereas let's just go. I mean, you could go all the way back to, Signals, Grace Under Pressure, Moving Pictures, but the 2 albums prior, Counterparts and Roll the Bones, huge themes running through both of them. Roll the Bones, you got Chance and all that, and Counterparts, you've got the whole nuts and bolts, Rush kind of returning to their roots and things that go together. Test for Echo does have somewhat of a theme running through it. As I mentioned, the longest between albums, and it's kind of like, can you still hear us? Like, are you still with us? Are you still there? And there's a lot of that in some of these songs that we're going to talk about tonight. So I did want to just bring those 2 things up because I thought they were important here, mainly for the reason of why I chose this album for you. And this is, I would put this record in my top 5 Rush albums. I like it that much, but most Rush fans wouldn't. Most Rush fans consider this to be probably their least favorite. You know, you on average, right? And if you were to take an average of every single Rush fan and they rank their records, you know, top to bottom, you're probably going to see Test for Echo at 17, 18, or 19, like very close to the bottom. And um, I wanted the challenge of talking through this record with you because I'm sure there's probably not very many people who would want that challenge. So
Yeah.
I thought it would be fun to you know, discuss this record being one of my favorites and definitely being, I don't know, maybe one of the most, maybe you could use the term overlooked. That term's
Yeah.
thrown around quite a bit, but definitely one of the least favorites for sure.
Yeah. No, thanks for that. It was good for me. I mean, so far with my Rush experience, I've been a little bit contrarian in that so far, out of all the albums that I've done, I've really enjoyed most of the albums I've listened to. But the one that I've loved the most so far has been Clockwork Angels.
Yep,
I
yep.
I really loved that album. So, you know, my views on Rush might be a little contrarian from the average Rush fan too, getting into it.
Sure.
So so it starts off with the title track, Test for Echo. And the thing I noticed right off the bat, not only does this album sound very different from the 80s Rush, which is a lot of the albums I've done in this series so far have been 80s Rush, but I also feel that this album does sound quite a bit different even from Counterparts. It's a very 90s sounding, you know, metal on this song.
Right. Right.
You know, the lyrics seem to be about sort of the surveillance state and 24-hour news and that sort of thing. If I noticed a bit of a theme through this album in any way, it was sort of a technology theme too.
For sure.
There's quite a few songs sort of doing with technology in that. And the tempo of this song, it sort of veers between half time and double time. It's a really bone crunching opener, I think.
It's definitely one that it's, I think fans really do catch on to this song and the next one. I'm sure we'll get into that. They're probably the two popular tracks on this album, but it's definitely one that the band kind of ignored after this tour. I'm not sure it was ever played again. I don't think it was. I think it was only played on that tour. So I know, actually, I could be wrong. It might have been played on Vapor Trails, but not often. Let's put it that way. Just a song that's yeah, good track for sure. Good opener.
Yeah. The next song is Driven. And I saw this as a song about wanting to take control over your life. You feel like, you know, all the outside forces are
Sure.
controlling where you're going, and you want to just be at the wheel of your own life, as it were. There's more really sort of metal riffing on this song, but there's some acoustic guitar in places as well, which gives it a nice sort of added texture, I think. The riff that goes through the verses on this song keeps changing time signatures too. And I really, really love that when they do that. I'm a prog fan from way back, so those sort of little tricky time signature things always really appeal to me. And it's cool for me when Geddy starts doing the main riff on his bass, playing bass chords in that middle section. I really, really love that. Great solo from Alex on this song. Early on in the album, you know, we're only 2 tracks in, but so far this is the heaviest Rush album I've listened to so far.
The heaviest Rush album so far? Okay. Yeah, I could see it. I have down in my notes that in my opinion, this is probably the closest sounding record to Clockwork Angels.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that as a new listener, but I know you told me prior, you know, in email that you really liked Clockwork Angels, and I kind of had a good, when you said that, I kind of had a good feeling that you might like this one. So I guess we'll see. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, definitely. In my opinion, it sounds probably the closest to Clockwork Angels, if I had to pick one.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's probably something to be said for that. The next song is Half the World, and this one is like I said, this one's still got sort of crunchy riffs and that sort of thing, but it's more of an alternative rock feel on this song rather than a metal feel that you get with the first two songs. This song seems to be about sort of polarization, and I don't just mean sort of political polarization, but I mean just in general life, sort of polarization between this half and that half, the haves and the have-nots, that sort of thing. Right. It's quite a catchy song, which I could imagine this song getting a bit of radio airplay. I don't know if it did at the time, but
I believe it did. Yeah, I was 3, but yeah, I believe that.
And Alex playing the mandola on it, it really emphasizes that alternative rock feel. It almost gives it a bit of an REM kind of vibe going to it.
For sure.
So yeah, did you have any extra thoughts on that song? Or
yeah, Half the World. I think that's the radio hit, if there was one on this record. I think it's definitely the poppiest song. You know, it's kind of, I hear hints of like country running through it. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Half the World was left over from Counterparts, because if you think about it thematically, it's kind of, you've done Counterparts,
yes,
correct? So far. So with the whole theme of, you know, polarity and things that go together, Half the World talks about, you know, halves quite a bit in the lyrics. So I definitely think it's probably something that was at least thought about during Counterparts. But yeah, good track, the shortest of the on the record, and definitely probably the most radio friendly for sure.
Yeah. So the next song is The Color of Right. And I noted first off that this is probably the first song on the album where I can actually hear a little bit of keyboards. There probably are some in those first 3 songs, but they're really, really in the background. Whereas this one, they're a little bit further forward in the mix. Like Half the World, this one also has a bit of an alternative rock feel to it for me. The lyrics sort of about not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. You know, so not being too idealistic about, you know, trying to get things achieved. I always love Neil's lyrics. I've noted this throughout this whole series, but, you know, Rush lyrics are never trivial. And I really, really like that about this band. It's quite a straightforward song musically, but again, this one's very catchy too, I think.
I would agree. This is top 3 for me on the record. I get the vibes from this song that it's about being on the road, in a way, with the band, because, and the whole, you know, can you still hear us thing, like, you know, do the Hulk Hogan type of thing with my ear. But no, I think thematically this record, like I was saying, is Can You Still Hear Us? And I think this is about being on the road, because I don't have an explanation for Another Lonely Night. Being on the road away from your partner, the guys in the band. Take It Easy on Me Now, I'd be there if I could. You know, think of all the missed birthdays and the missed, you know, baseball practices or whatever that you would miss as a parent on the road. Like, that's what you know, it's a hopeless situation, lie awake for half the night. You're not sure what's going on here, but you're sure it isn't. Like, that could be like the partner's worrying about what they're doing on the road. Are they, you know, they're women. I mean, rock stars do that, right? So Rush didn't, but that's what I get out of this song. I don't know if I've ever heard anyone, you know, explain it like that, but that's kind of just what I get out of The Color, right? And I think it's an absolutely beautiful song. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I do like this one. Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah. So the next one's Time and Motion. And the first thing I noted is that the opening of this is probably the proggiest thing on the album.
Sure.
And so I really love that. The intro actually has a bit of a King Crimson feel to me. And King Crimson are one of my favorite bands. So, you know, that's a good thing. The lyric seems to be one of what I describe as one of Neil's word pictures, like he's creating a a mood or an image. Like I don't
Yes.
get I didn't really get a literal meaning out of this song. Like that kind of
Right.
escaped me, but I like the imagery that he creates with this lyric. There's some more really crunchy riffing on this song, which I like, which is this time interspersed with keyboards. But yeah, this is probably one of my favorite songs on the album.
That's funny you say that, because this was for a long time probably one of my least favorite Rush songs.
Oh,
I had this probably near the bottom in the catalog, but I've really come around on it in the last couple of years. It's still not, one of my favorites by any means, but I definitely come around on it. I mean, there's the part in the middle section, the mighty ocean dances with the moon and the silent forest echoes with the loon. I always thought that was kind of, well done and interesting. But Time in Motion, I feel like Time in Motion is just a song that you either really like it or you really don't like it.
hmm.
And at the beginning, I really didn't like it at all, and now, like I said, I've kind of really come around on it. It's not one of my favorites, but I do hold it in pretty high regard on this record. I think it's definitely it's different. It's
Yeah,
unique. It's very Rush like in that regard, right? So
yeah. That's a good song. As I say, it's for me, I really connected with this song. So yeah.
good stuff. Cool.
So the next song is Totem. And the first phrase that came to my mind when I was listening to this song was heavy folk. It's almost like a folk song, but done with, distorted
Okay.
guitars and that sort of thing. Um, a mystical lyric, but tied into the real world as well, which, is a really interesting creative choice, I think. Um, I really like this song. This is another one that's probably up towards one of my favorites on the album. The
Okay.
music is more straightforward in the first half of this album, but it's still interesting music, and the playing so far on this album, absolutely first rate. These guys are such great musicians.
Yes, they are. No argument there. Yeah, this is probably my favorite on the record. Totem. Um, Totem is. I could put this song on in any mood. It's one of those songs that just kind of vibes with any, sad, happy, ready to rock out. It kind of just fits all of them. And I think Getty does a really good job delivering these lyrics too, because there's a lot of not necessarily tongue twisters, but definitely close, because singing a pantheon of animals and a pagan soul, Vishnu and Gaia, Aztec and Maya. I mean, good luck, right? I mean, I assume that's probably why this was never played live, right? Because of some of the lyrics. But yeah, I think it's one of my favorites, and I think it's cool that you like it as well.
Yeah. So we get into the second half of the album now, and we get the song Dog Years. And my notes just say, wow, not what I was expecting on a Rush album, because this song has almost a punky feel to it, which I really was not expecting on a Rush album. It's
Sure.
a really good lyric about not letting life pass you by too quickly. There's some nice harmonies in the chorus too, which I'm not used to a lot of harmony vocals on a Rush album. So I did want to ask you the question, is that Geddy harmonizing with himself, or is it Alex supplying the harmonies, or did they bring in some backup singers for this song?
Well, they definitely didn't bring in backup. There's no backup singers on this. I do know that Alex would occasionally sing backup vocals, but I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to assume it was probably Getty, because I don't. Alex did a lot of that live.
Yeah.
I don't know how often he did that in the studio though. So my guess would be it's probably. I know for a fact it's not someone else, but it's probably Getty.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah. And the other thing I noted was there's a lyric in this song about the dogs sniffing at the hydrant, which took me right back to the cover of the album Signals.
Signals, yeah. I think that was intentional. I have
Yeah.
you have to assume that was everything. Everything Neil Peart did when he wrote his lyrics was intentional. If you see, not necessarily in this song, but if you see words or phrases repeated that's intentional. Those are words that he's trying to get across thematically or emotionally, or trying to set the is the atmosphere of the song. All it's completely intentionally done. So
Yeah.
this is probably, if this song and the next song were not on the record, I'd have to think people would really kind of gravitate to this record, or at least gravitate to this record a little bit more. This song, Dog Years, and Virtuality being the next song, are, you've got Dog Years, and people call it, the corny lyrics, right? And we'll talk about Virtuality next, but it's Dog Years is definitely every band has, kind of a laughing stock song, right? Or kind of an outlier, or one that people are kind of confused that they wrote, right? I think this one is that for Rush fans. I like it. I can agree that the lyrics are kind of not Rush-like. They're kind of random, but I like how it uses the dog's life as a metaphor for, time,
Yeah.
right? I mean, Getty said in a recent interview, with Strombo and Alex, uh, one thing he learned throughout the pandemic and Neil's passing and all that is the value of time. And I think
Yeah.
this song demonstrates that perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, I actually really like the lyric on this song. The song
Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
the song I always had a bit of difficulty with, as far as, well, not so much the lyric, but the delivery, which really sort of threw me, was back on Counterparts, and that's Double Agent, because I thought
Okay.
the way that Getty speaks those vocals was really sort of sounded a bit goofy,
Double Agent is in my top 10 Rush songs, maybe even
Yeah.
top 5. I love that song. And I think the spoken word, once you get by the spoken word, it's a phenomenal track. But
Oh yeah. Musically, it was probably my favorite on the album, but the spoken word just really threw me at first.
It's
I need to
unique.
give that song more listens, but yeah.
Yeah. It's unique. It's Rush and it's unique, so.
Yeah. So now we do get onto Virtuality, which I said had really hooky metal riffing on this one.
Yes.
The intro has some quieter but cool riffing, and then back to the heavy riffing again. And a recurring theme on this album for me, musically, is heavy songs, but with really catchy choruses. And this is no exception. The chorus on this song is catchy as hell. It's a song about the internet and virtual relationships, but it also kind of harkens back lyrically to almost some of the fantasy kind of lyrics that Neil was doing in the 70s.
Yep.
So it's a great sort of combination, sort of, being a very 90s song, but harkening back a little bit to that 70s Rush, lyrically.
Yeah, I never really thought about it like that, and I think you're spot on. I also think that a lot of folks will say that this song is dated because it was written about the birth of the internet, like you said, and I would argue that it's not really that dated. I mean, there's aspects of this song that you can apply to today's society and today's culture and today's technology, and I don't.
Absolutely.
Sure, it was written about technology of that time, but that technology has evolved. It hasn't changed drastically, right? So it's definitely, there's still aspects of the song applicable to today. So
absolutely.
I don't think it's as dated as people say.
No, I think he's not sort of talking about the technology as much as he's talking about how the technology is used. And I think the technology is still being used the way it was in 1996, but even more so.
Exactly. Yep.
So,
very well said.
I might argue that this song's even more relevant than it was in 1996.
Yep. 100% agree.
Yeah. So the next song is Resist. And, this is a thing, been a recurring theme for me throughout this series of Rush albums that I've done, is that I've had a very mixed track record when it comes to Rush ballads. A couple of
Okay.
them I've really, really liked, and a couple of them have been, for me, the weakest song on the album. And I honestly don't know how I feel about this one yet. It probably is my least favorite song on the album, but it's not like, I don't have as visceral a reaction to it as I might with a couple of the other Rush ballads that I did in earlier albums that I've done in the series. It's a song about, well, what I got from it anyway was sort of not tolerating the intolerable things in one's life. Yeah, it's a nice track, but I don't know. I like the more up tempo, crunchier tracks on this album than this one, but that's just my sort of personal view of it.
Yeah, that's fair. Based on the conversation we've had so far, I that doesn't surprise me that this is definitely near the bottom for you. But I think Rush fans would kill me if I didn't bring this up. Have you heard the live rendition of this acoustic only on they did it on R30 and they did it in Rush and Rio. The R30 one, in my opinion, is probably the better one to go to. So have you heard that?
No, not yet, but I will definitely check it out after this show.
Yeah, just put into YouTube Rush Resist R30 from their 30th anniversary tour in 2004, and that's a lot of people's go-to when it comes to this song. That they prefer that over the actual studio version. I like them both. I think they're both great, but a lot of people will definitely argue that that's the better version of this track. So it might change your opinion.
Yeah, no. I could definitely hear that being the case.
Yeah.
But I'll definitely check that out probably straight after we finish recording this, actually. So the next track is Limbo, and my very first reaction to this was, yay, a Rush instrumental, because the couple of Rush instrumentals that I've had so far in this series, I've absolutely adored. This one isn't quite as intricate as Leave That Thing Alone or YYZ, which are the other two Rush instrumentals that I've sort of been exposed to so far, but it's still a really great workout for these fine musicians. There are some wordless vocals on this song, but I still think that it qualifies as an instrumental because there's no lyrics. Yeah, I mean, and like everything except Resist, this song still really rocks. You know, there's a lot of really heavy rock on this album, which I really like.
So, yeah, I mean, I think I read that this track was compiled of a bunch of either old parts of songs that they just couldn't use, or old parts of songs from this record that they kind of were developing that just didn't fall into place, and they kind of just, like, monster mashed it all together. Because there's a Monster Mash reference in this. Whatever happened to my Transylvania Twist? I think it's Monster Mash.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't know if the band's ever been on a record of saying why they called it Limbo, but it might be a Rush Limbaugh like jab in a way. That's what some folks have said. But yeah, I mean, not one of my favorite instrumentals, but still solid. Comes on, it's not a skip for me. I think it's good. I think when it comes to Rush instrumentals, you said you listened to Leave That Thing Alone and YYZ so far.
Yeah.
Well, you've got you've got the big one coming up, so I'll leave that for. I won't give you a spoiler, but yeah.
No,
there's more, I'm sure, that are much better than this. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough. So, well, I mean, I as I say, so far I'm 3 for 3 with really liking the Rush instrumentals that I've heard so far. So yeah, and then the last track is Carve Away the Stone. And, this is a song about not carrying burdens in your life that you don't need to let go of things that, that might be holding you back. It's not quite as heavy as the other tracks on the album, but it's still a really good song. Geddy's playing some bass chords again. I love it when bass players play bass chords. Alex plays some great solos throughout this album. and including on this song. He's not showy on this album. Like, as I've said in some of the other Rush episodes that I've done, Alex, generally speaking, is not a really shreddy guitar player. And I kind of like that about his playing. His playing's melodic. It's always in service of the song rather than showing off. It's a great album closer, this song. And I like that the song comes to a full end rather than a fade out. It's great that the album finishes like with a full stop, as it were. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And it says in the lyric sheet right here, I mean, I'm not going to show it because it's so dark, you can't hardly read it, but it says, if you want something done right, just forget it. This is what it says in the bottom of this. And I think, I mean, I get, so this song has one of my favorite and underrated Alex guitar solos in it. It just gives me this in my head. What's on the CD? It's all like swirly and like wavy, and like it just gives me that image like in my head when I listen to this solo, and I think it's just so very atmospheric and like you said, Alex, he's not a shredder. He's not your Joe Satriani or Steve Vai type guitar player. He's a lot more, or Eddie Van Halen. He's a lot more serves the, you said it perfectly, serves the song, and this one's no different. I think it's I do think it's I don't know what song, I don't know what else you could put as a closing track on this record other than this. I mean, I don't think it's a great closing track in terms of the entire discography of Rush, but I think it definitely fits this record as a closing track for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, overall with this album, I definitely wouldn't say this is the worst Rush album, not by any stretch. In fact, of the albums that I've done so far, I definitely like this one better than Counterparts. I definitely like this one better than Hold Your Fire. So, I don't know if it's right in the top tier of the Rush albums that I've listened to so far, but it's an album that I really, really enjoyed. So thank you so much for recommending this album for me.
Absolutely. I'm surprised you like this one more than Counterparts, to be honest, because Counterparts is a kind of a favorite towards the end, the back end of their career amongst Rush fans. So
I think the thing I had with Counterparts is that all the other Rush albums that I've listened to so far tend to have an overall sound. Like there's a sound that flows throughout the whole album, whereas Counterparts was a little bit sort of bits and pieces for me. Like different songs sounded quite different from each other.
I
think that might have been what it was. I mean, the things I liked on Counterparts, I loved, but there were a couple of tracks that just didn't quite connect with me. So, but anyway, thank you so much for recommending this album for me. Can you please let my viewers know where they can find you, where they can find Rush Fans?
Yeah, so Rush Fans we're kind of all over the place now. We originated on Instagram, just as a Rush fan page, just sharing photos of the band during their tours up until 2015. So that's at Rush Fans. But it's grown into a full-blown community now, where we have a Twitter account, we have a Threads account. That's the new parallel to Twitter. But primarily you'll find us on YouTube now. We're almost at our 200th episode. I don't know when your video here will air, but 200th episode coming end of September, of Rush Roundtable. So anyone that wants to talk Rush, if you're a big Rush fan, if you're a new Rush fan or whatever, we'll talk to anybody. We're looking to grow our community, add more people to to our panels, and it's just all Rush all the time. So you can just put in Rush Fans, all one word, on YouTube to find us there, or Rush Roundtable will find us as well. So always looking to add new people.
Wonderful. That's great. And I will leave links in the description for all of that. Please do like, share, and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted. So if you want to look at my other episodes of Bicycle Legs Discovers Rush, there's a playlist for those. If you want to look at my studio albums ranked episodes, there's a playlist for those. If you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at Bicycle Legs on Instagram and Twitter, and I now have a dedicated Bicycle Legs Facebook page. Links will all be in the description. Please come and give those a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.